Hello, my name is Zeena Farook. I work with a company called ARPA. We are a multidisciplinary firm working in the built environment, and I am leading on digital proposition growth, specifically in our innovation team. So today I'm going to discuss with you the challenges that we are having with data at a city scale. So it's a specifically interesting one. A little bit more about ARPA. So ARPA are employee owned. As I mentioned, we're a multidisciplinary firm and we work in the built environment. But we often follow our founders' ethos where we want to shape a better world. So more recently, we've developed that strategy to our sustainable future strategy. So we have focused on sustainable development in everything that we do. So a lot of our digital products and propositions do work around this strategy for clients. So recently in this kind of development, we have found that there are global data challenges. One revolves around citywide decarbonisation, the pathway to net zero, and the other one is thinking about future climate, so climate resilience. So in the last week, for example, the Environment Agency predicted doom with regards to future climate and has said that Britain is ill prepared for that. So these kind of problems are increasingly coming to us. Legislation is specifically changing and we need to be prepared for it. And it gives a huge opportunity, I feel, to innovators, and open data can be the key to that. Right, so I'll start with city decarbonisation. I think the city decarbonisation problem is a little bit of a wicked one. So we often have very poor quality information. The choices for improvement are complex and often uncertain. We have multiple actors, we have multiple owners of data, and our data sources are often very patchy and sketchy. But data in citywide decarbonisation can be a cross-cutting barrier to tackling this problem. So if we can provide open data in the right way, we can really tackle this problem and make a change. The kind of things that our clients come to us with are they are concerned about cost. So what's the cost versus benefit? How do you operationalize these things going forward? Citywide integration. So how do we deal with this on a macro scale rather than an individual basis to increase efficiency and make sure that we're doing the best that we can in terms of getting towards net zero carbon. But the biggest problem is often data. So from what data is available, there are often huge gaps. So how can we then provide clear insights with the data that we have? And how do we overcome the problem of dealing with a vast amount of data? And another point is if we had the right open data, we can think about system integration. So how do we develop a whole energy system integration thinking, so as well as, thinking about domestic properties, how do we think about non-domestic properties? How do we think about industrial decarbonisation? And how do we join this all together? So open data is very much the key to that. So an example of how the kind of problems that we have to deal with and how partnerships have helped us with that and how open data is being used is ARPA has been asked by cities, specifically by BEIS, the government department, to decarbonise whole cities and whole portfolios. We are also being asked by key clients to think about their specific portfolios, sometimes 30 to 40 buildings, and the whole city example, sometimes it's up to thousands of buildings. So we've asked about the decarbonisation pathway. But data collection is expensive, and as we mentioned, the data is often sketchy. The open data that we have available sometimes can be on the basis of addresses only. So in that case, we have used a platform by a Finnish startup called Scenario Labs, for example. Here where they collect that data, they do the data processing and data collection, and we use our specialist knowledge to deliver on insights. So in that case, we can deliver analytics and forecasts. We can think about investment plans for retrofit and look at really long-term performance and ROI. So that shows how we partner to resolve this specific data problem and the lack of open data therein. Another problem that I mentioned was future climate. So with future climate, across the built environment, ARPA is seeing more opportunities to help clients prepare for the impacts of climate change. So how do we think about both new buildings and existing buildings and infrastructure? How do we make sure that they are resilient for the future? So we can use climate projections to understand the impacts on whole geographies, sectors, and specific assets. And our clients want to know how climate change might impact them and their future plans. And if they don't currently want to know, it's very often the case that they will soon be required to know through government intervention and various other things. So in much more detail, here are some of the challenges for our clients and for ARPA. So the data that's available on future climate is limited. We don't always have consistent accessibility, availability, and application. So the data can be very different from where you get it. Finding the right data is often time consuming. It requires a lot of knowledge and it's not always feasible. Another thing is that there's no single source of truth. So non-experts can use platforms to accrue a lot of data without sufficient knowledge of how it should be used. And there are inefficiencies, therefore. There's inconsistency and limited quality assurance. So climate data is somewhat overly available in a scattered way, and the lack of consistency here is an issue. So ARPA specifically have been working around this by developing their own platform called Klima, where we think about one platform for sharing and using climate data, and it's used by experts to be applied in our projects. So it's interesting actually because I've discussed with you two specific examples, but they have completely different problems with open data. For city-wide decarbonisation, there is a lack of open data to enable integration and whole systems thinking. It makes things much more expensive to do, and delivery therefore might never happen, or alternatively, it might be problematic to deliver and we will have delayed expensive delivery. Another problem is future climate. So there's a challenge of variation in open data leading to inconsistency and risk. So how do we make sure that we reduce that for clients? So ARPA ourselves as thought leaders partner with clients and we partner with innovators to solving these sorts of problems. So if you're interested in discussion, please do talk to me. You can also get in touch via LinkedIn. My name is Zeena Farook, and so please do ask those questions and continue this discussion going forward. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that was insightful and useful.